Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had such a great time this last weekend in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're there at Cornerstone Church. People excited about the coming of the Lord. Like I say, every week it freaks me out to see people so excited. And we did talk about last week before that when we were at West Coast Life Church in California at Ray Jean and Beth Wilson's church. Ray Jean's new Christmas album. Listen, you have to go get it. It's with he and his daughter Sophia. It's absolutely amazing. The part of it that's so amazing is he does the prayer song, which of course Andrea Bocelli's done it for years with Celine Dion and with Heather Headley. Well, Ray Jean does it, and it was done live in Santa Barbara, and it's absolutely, there's such a presence on it. You need to get that. You can look at it on YouTube. You can order it on several different locations, Apple and Amazon, whatever. Get the album. It's so cool. It blows me away how good that song is. So we're coming to you every week to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, and specifically the gathering of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war. And man, the rapture is signless, but the second coming has tons of signs. So we try to zero in on the things that happen just after the rapture. And man, you got stuff happening every single week that are astonishing, especially the last couple of weeks. Things are just in complete setup mode for that to happen. So I'm going to hit a few things right now that I forgot about last week. I completely missed them, but we'll hit a couple of those, and then we'll get into a lot of things that are happening around Israel. There's many things pointing to the Ezekiel 38 war, and it's pretty astounding. Last week I forgot about Israel had basically, this is amazing. It came out in an American newspaper. It came out in the headlines in the Middle Eastern newspapers, how Israel had used 1,000 Mossad agents to basically sabotage Iran's nuclear program this last year. The detail of it is so in-depth. You should look at debka.com, D-E-B-K-A, because it's page after page after page how they recruited scientists to even sabotage the nuclear program. So, I mean, it's just over the top insight and what they had to do to keep Iran from nuking Israel already. So, along with that, this was a pretty big deal, the vote at the UN. The UN voted 129 nations to 11 to say that the Temple Mount doesn't belong to Israel, it belongs to Islam. So 129 countries, as opposed to 11 countries, voting that saying the Temple Mount doesn't belong to Israel. Absolutely insane. So the stuff that's happening this last week, especially all the meetings in Vienna about the nuclear talks, the International Atomic Energy Agency came out this last week and said, you can't go back to the rules from 2015 because Iran's so close to a breakout of a nuclear weapon that the 2015 rules won't work. So it's interesting to hear them say that. So in the middle of that, you had Iran boasting because you have America and Israel doing joint military exercises really to confront Iran, basically going through a mock-up of an attack on Iran. That's kind of crazy because our government basically said they're not going to do that. And the Jerusalem Post put this out front and center, said that Biden's more concerned about settlements than he is a nuclear weapon for Iran. So it's just crazy how so many things are happening right now. So with that, Iran boasted being able to launch a satellite. With that, the reason being they were saying we're going to do it right now is the technology to do that is basically being able to send an ICBM 4,000 miles. So Iran was technically saying not only can we hit Israel with an atomic weapon, we can hit the United States with an atomic weapon. So the back and forth with all this, it's literally what you would see just before the tribulation period. It's pretty amazing to see the back and forth of that. You had Jews on the Temple Mount this last week. They were dressing up like Muslims so they can go pray on the Temple Mount. Everything's getting ready to hit because of the settlements in the Temple Mount. It's going to get cooler and cooler. So much going on behind the scenes with Russia. Russia's Putin came out and said he wants to have a meeting with the U.S. and with NATO because of literally Russia's got a couple 100,000 troops right on the edge of the Ukraine, and it looks like in the next month they're going to invade. Well, NATO's acting so strong with its nuclear weapons. Putin said it's going to park nukes right there in Europe against NATO. So you've got the things coming to a head with that. Turkey this last week lost almost all their money. Their lira dropped to the lowest point it's ever dropped. You had an explosion in Lebanon, and a lot of Palestinians got injured because it was a Hamas weapons depot. So you got Hamas, you got Turkey, you got Russia, you got all these things. So many of them coming together. Then you get with nature. You had a huge volcanic eruption happening in De Palma again, which is going on for 85 days. Too crazy. Then you had another one in Indonesia. So that one was huge in Indonesia. You had about 45 people killed. The one that kind of is intriguing to me is in Japan. There's such little quakes happening in Japan that everyone's in fear about a massive earthquake there. So you have Taiwan and China getting ready to go at it. China warned and basically told America, if there's one shot from an American toward us, if they go into Taiwan, they're going to attack American soldiers. So you got it happening over there with China, you got it happening with Russia, you got it happening with Turkey, and the things that are happening around Israel, so many behind the scenes things happening with Iran. The Iran stuff is pretty amazing how they're being so boisterous about their message. They even released 110 missile speedboats this last week into the Gulf there to show that they've got even more activity there. So they're trying to cover all their bases. They're trying to flaunt what they have because they got mad that Israel and the U.S. said we're going to have a mock attack of Iran. So interesting to see their response. Their response is they're not backing down. So when I saw the International Atomic Energy Agency say that today, I was really intrigued because there's nothing monitoring what Iran is doing right now. So one guy said they're 3 weeks away. So that's why get ready. You're getting ready to see some radical stuff happen right there because Israel cannot let Iran get a nuclear weapon. So we always go back to the Scripture, though. There's so many activities happening that point to it, but number one, Israel made a nation. Number two, Jerusalem won back. Jesus said the generation that sees those two will not pass away till all is fulfilled. So then you got the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You got the fertility of the land of Israel. You got the revival of the Roman Empire. You have the 172 different species of predatory birds that showed up. You had foxes show up on the Temple Mount. You had fish show up in the Dead Sea. You had the Dead Sea 3 weeks ago turn blood red where Sodom and Gomorrah was on the Day of Atonement. That freaks me out. So you have all these things happening. You have the ritual baths around the Temple Mount fill up with water. You have all these things with nature happening. You can go to NASA has a new site for asteroids. I mean, we talked about one this last week that came by. There's a couple this week. You got a huge one coming by the 27th of December. NASA has a new website that helps track these asteroids, so you need to go and look at that. So you have all these natural things along with everything that the Bible says about Israel. Men would be lovers themselves. We have selfie sticks. And then you have the setup for the tribulation. You got contractions, birth pains in Matthew 24, just before the tribulation. You know, when a woman's going into labor, she doesn't go, hey, those are the coolest contractions I've ever had in my life. No, she's thinking about the baby that's coming. So what we're having in the earth, I don't even get into all the COVID stuff happening. There's so much weird stuff happening with COVID. In Sweden now, they're putting proof of vaccine chips in their hands because you can't go anywhere without not just being vaccinated, proof of vaccination. So everything is leading up to what the Antichrist is going to do, and that'll be total control. So don't get freaked out now. Just rejoice. Jesus said, lift up your heads. Your redemption's drawing nigh. So why do we get into all this? It's an acceleration mentality. He loves you so much. He wants you to have a heads up. He wants you excited. He wants you filled with strength. He wants you to finish strong. And I hear people go, well, why do you have to teach on end times? Tell a quarterback in the last part of the game not to show him the clock. The 2-minute warning happens, and you're paying attention to that clock because the plays are more crucial. We look at Israel as our timepiece. So as we see all these things surrounding Israel, just like the Bible said you'd see, we can tell that the king is just about to come. My friend, you're about to see the Jesus of Nazareth. You're about to see the one that made everything that you see. He's the brightness of the glory of God. He's the shepherd and the bishop of our souls. He's King Jesus. Wow, the earth is going to bow in adoration. Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that He's Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So what do? Help our local church, help our local pastor, get involved, be engaged, get radical about obeying God. Man, great joy for you in this season of His birth. We celebrate the King being born this month. Man, we're about to see Him as the King. Have a blessed, awesome week. We'll try to get all of it in for next week because so much happened that I may have missed a few things, but come back and we'll get into it. Have a blessed, awesome week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the edu at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.